Carol Burnett made millions laugh for 11 years straight, but in 1977, she did something that made her entire crew cry. The episode aired once and broke viewers' hearts. Critics called it brilliant and awards poured in, but Carol never watched it again. Not once in 47 years. She said it was too real. The sketch hit so close to home, she couldn't bear seeing herself in it. What made America's funniest woman refuse to face her own performance? Carol Burnett was born on April 26, 1933, in San Antonio, Texas. From the very beginning, her life was surrounded by pain. Her parents, both alcoholics, were unable to care for her. Her father worked at a movie theater, but couldn't hold a job for long. Her mother drank just as much and wasn't emotionally present. Both would later die from alcohol-related illnesses. By the time Carol was just a toddler, she had already learned what it felt like to be unwanted. The people meant to love her most had chosen bottles over bedtime stories. It was a lonely, unpredictable world, and Carol learned early on that laughter could protect her from breaking. When her parents fully gave up on raising her, Carol was taken in by her maternal grandmother, Mabel White. In 1940, they left Texas and moved to Hollywood, but there was no red carpet waiting. They lived in a single, cramped room in a rundown boarding house, surrounded by other broken souls, addicts, mentally ill tenants, people clinging to hope while starving on welfare. Carol and her grandmother survived on $20 a week, barely enough for food, let alone a dream. But Mabel gave Carol what she'd never had before: unconditional love. She was poor, yes, but she was finally safe. In the middle of that chaos, Carol invented an escape. She created a pretend twin sister named Karen. Karen was everything Carol wasn't: confident, beautiful, always smiling. And Carol made her so real that even the other tenants believed she existed. She'd run up the fire escape, change clothes, change her hair, and reappear as Karen, charming and playful. Then, minutes later, she'd return as Carol. The fact that these adults, many of them barely hanging on themselves, believed it says a lot about both Carol's acting skill and how much everyone in that house needed something joyful to believe in. But some escapes were more real than others. Every Saturday, Carol and her grandmother would go to the movies. Tickets cost 25 cents for two, more than 10% of their weekly income. For those few hours, Carol left behind the peeling paint, the shouting, and the fear. On screen, life sparkled. Stars danced, people kissed. There was food, beauty, and order. But when the credits rolled, survival came back into focus. They couldn't afford toilet paper at home, so they'd quietly steal it from the theater bathroom. They weren't ashamed. They were desperate. Even at 7 years old, Carol understood what it meant to be hungry for more than food. One day, sitting in that darkened theater, she heard Johnny Weissmuller's famous Tarzan yell echo through the room. It hit her like lightning. At home, she began mimicking it obsessively, perfecting every pitch and rhythm. She had no idea she was training her voice, building the kind of breath control most singers take years to master. It was just a game, but it became a signature. That yell would later bring down audiences in laughter and applause during her live shows. What began as a child's imitation became one of the first tools in her comedy arsenal. By the time Carol finished high school, she had one dream: journalism. Her mother had always wanted to be a writer, and Carol felt obligated to finish what her mother couldn't. UCLA was the goal, but when the time came to enroll, she faced a brutal reality. She didn't have the $50 needed to cover tuition. That's around $600 today. For most people, it would have meant the end. And for a while, it seemed like it was. Then something strange happened. A stranger whose identity she never learned stepped in and paid the amount. No strings, no explanation, just enough money to change her life. At UCLA, she planned to study journalism, but one elective theater class flipped her world upside down. In that room, something inside her clicked. She wasn't shy anymore. She wasn't poor or invisible. She was funny, loud, and completely alive. Her professors noticed it. So did her classmates. She could sing, act, and make people laugh in the same breath. Suddenly, Journalism looked too small for her. She switched majors. It was risky, but for the first time in her life, she wasn't surviving. She was dreaming. That risk paid off quickly. At the end of her freshman year, she was named Most Promising Newcomer in UCLA's theater program. It was more than a title, it was a prophecy. It told her she wasn't crazy for chasing this dream. It gave her the courage to push harder, to take the stage seriously, and to stop apologizing for wanting more than just survival. The award opened doors, giving her better roles in school productions and support from mentors who could see she wasn't like the others. She wasn't just another hopeful actress. She had the kind of spark you couldn't fake. Carol Burnett was just a college junior in 1954, working as an usherette for 65 cents an hour when her life took a strange turn at a party in San Diego. She wasn't there to celebrate. She was stuffing hors d'oeuvres into her purse to bring home to her grandmother. That's when a sharply dressed stranger approached her. He wasn't in showbiz. He was a millionaire shipbuilder from La Jolla. Carol told him she dreamed of going to New York to make it on Broadway, but couldn't even afford UCLA's $43 tuition. The man made her an offer that sounded too good to be true, $1,000 each for her and her boyfriend, Don Soyan. But he gave them 3 rules. Never reveal his name. Only use the money to get to New York. And if they made it, they had to help others do the same. He didn't want credit. He just said someone had once helped him, and he was paying it forward. His wife would later say he'd done this kind of thing before for gas stations, restaurants, and people chasing dreams. With the $2,000 in hand, Carol and Don packed up and left UCLA behind. They headed east in 1954, even though Carol had never been further than Texas. She didn't know anyone in New York, but she didn't care. She said later, "I didn't know enough to be scared." They landed in the city and checked into the Algonquin Hotel at $9 a night. It was too much. The money started disappearing fast. At one point, Carol broke down crying while making a collect call to her family, who begged her to come back. Then, right as she was about to give up, she heard a radio announcement. A hurricane named Carol was moving up the coast. She took it as a sign. Somehow, it gave her strength to stay. She soon found herself in a completely different world, the rehearsal club. It was an old boarding house for young women trying to break into the arts. For $18 a week, Carol got a cot in a shared room with 4 other actresses. There was only 1 bathroom and 1 closet, but to her it was paradise. She'd been sleeping on a couch back home. The place buzzed with energy, girls practicing lines, singing, running around with curlers in their hair. To make ends meet, Carol worked as a hat check girl at night and auditioned during the day. It wasn't glamorous, but it was real. In March 1955, she and the other girls put on a show called the Rehearsal Club Review and mailed out invitations to agents and producers. Big names like Marlene Dietrich showed up. That night, doors started opening. Her first big break came from something totally ridiculous, a love song about John Foster Dulles, the stiff, ultra-serious U.S. Secretary of State, written by Ken Welch. It was a joke song, over the top and absurd, but Carol performed it so perfectly that it became her signature. The audiences went wild. She got invited onto the Jack Paar Show, and then the Ed Sullivan Show. On January 6, 1957, she stepped out onto the Sullivan stage with her knees shaking. But by the end of her set, people were howling with laughter. In August that same year, she went back to perform the Dulles song again, plus a parody of Puppy Love. That ridiculous ballad turned her into the talk of New York comedy. For the next 5 years, Carol kept grinding. She had a small role on the Paul Winchell Show in 1955, where she played a ventriloquist's dummy's girlfriend. That led to a part alongside Buddy Hackett and Stanley, which only lasted a year. But in 1959, everything changed. Carol landed the lead in Once Upon a Mattress, a new off-Broadway musical that got picked up for Broadway. She played Princess Winifred, a loud, clumsy girl from the marsh who was completely unlike any fairy tale princess. The show exploded in popularity. She earned her first Tony nomination, and on June 22, 1959, exactly 5 years after she got that mysterious loan, Carol and Don paid back the full $2,000. The millionaire never responded. He stayed anonymous to the very end. By then, Carol was earning $500 a week, which to her felt like hitting the jackpot. Once Upon a Mattress wasn't even supposed to be a hit. It started as a small summer camp project. Critics didn't love it when it debuted on Broadway in May 1959, but audiences did. The show ran for 470 performances, moving from theater to theater. Carol's performance made the difference. When she left the cast in June 1960, the show collapsed within a week. Her replacement only lasted 8 performances before it closed completely. Carol had become irreplaceable. Then came The Gary Moore Show. From 1959 to 1962, Carol went from rising star to full-on television powerhouse. She won her first Emmy in 1962. Her cleaning lady character became iconic. But the real impact of that show was in what it taught her. Gary Moore's unrehearsed Q&A warm-ups inspired the live audience interactions that would later define the Carol Burnett Show. The show also helped launch other major stars, including Don Knotts and Jonathan Winters. It ran from 1950 to 1967 and became one of the most influential variety shows ever. For Carol, it was a masterclass in timing, character, and risk. In 1962, something magical happened again, this time at Carnegie Hall. CBS was hesitant to let her do a special with Julie Andrews. They said Julie wasn't famous enough, and Carol was already on TV every week. But one night, after a promo event, the 2 executives in charge, Michael Dann and Oscar Katz, saw Carol struggling to get a taxi. She joked that a truck driver would probably give her a ride home instead. Moments later, a truck actually pulled up and offered her a lift. The execs took it as fate. The show got approved. That special, Julie and Carol at Carnegie Hall, won 3 major awards, including an Emmy and a Rose d'Or. Columbia Records even released a soundtrack that hit number 85 on the charts. But nothing compared to what came next. On September 11, 1967, The Carol Burnett Show premiered, and with it, television changed forever. Carol broke through a wall no one thought a woman could break. For 11 straight seasons, from September 11, 1967, to March 29, 1978, The Carol Burnett Show pulled in 30 million viewers every single week. That wasn't just good. It was historic. Few shows have ever reached that kind of audience. It became more than entertainment. It was an event. Time magazine even named it one of the 100 best television shows of all time. TV Guide placed it at 17. Variety ranked it 23. That's how big it was. But this wasn't just about big numbers. The show changed television itself. It was one of the first variety shows to feature live comedy skits in front of a studio audience. That style went on to inspire Saturday Night Live. And Carol Burnett? She broke serious ground. She wasn't just another star, she was one of the first women to lead her own variety show. At a time when most of television was run by men, she changed the rules and opened the door for countless women in comedy. No matter the day or time slot, the show held strong. Whether it aired Monday nights at 10 o'clock or Saturday nights later on, people kept watching. That kind of consistency is rare. And it wasn't just the fans who noticed. During its 11-year run, The Carol Burnett Show won a jaw-dropping 25 Primetime Emmy Awards. That's right, 25. The awards weren't all in one area either. The show won for writing, musical material, choreography, and, of course, Best Variety Series. Harvey Korman picked up 4 Emmys of his own in 1969, 1971, 1972, and 1974 for Outstanding Supporting Performance. Tim Conway also won 4, 3 for acting and 1 for writing. Even the show's final season in 1978 went out with a bang, sweeping multiple categories, including Best Variety Series. And it didn't stop there. Carol Burnett herself took home 2 Golden Globes for Best Actress in a Comedy or Musical in both 1977 and 1978. The Carol Burnett Show wasn't just a hit, it was a phenomenon, a true titan of television that captivated audiences and critics alike. The show's immense popularity was undeniable, highlighted by its remarkable People's Choice Award wins for Favorite Variety Program 3 years in a row, from 1975 to 1977, and then again in 1978. This unprecedented sweep across such prestigious awards wasn't merely a testament to its widespread appeal. It definitively cemented the Carol Burnett show's unshakable place as television royalty. In the decades since, most variety shows have barely managed to scratch the surface of the lasting impact and critical acclaim that Carol and her cast achieved. Yet, beneath the veneer of laughter and applause, the reality behind the scenes wasn't always a comedic sketch. During the show's 7th season, a tense period unfolded when the incredibly talented Harvey Korman nearly walked away from the show for good. The week in question featured an impressive lineup of guest stars, including the beloved Tim Conway and the renowned singer Petula Clark, two individuals widely known for their kindness within the cutthroat world of showbiz. However, Korman found himself in a less than jovial mood. Throughout rehearsals, his demeanor was noticeably rude and irritable. He was heard grumbling in the hallway at CBS, proclaiming, "I'm not doing this show anymore. I'm leaving for good, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life as Mr. Happy-Go-Lucky." And, astonishingly, that's precisely what he did. When he stepped off the elevator the following Monday morning, a striking transformation had occurred. He was cheerfully skipping and whistling, an image so unexpected that Burnett herself burst out laughing. To commemorate this amusing shift, she had a plaque made for his door, proudly declaring him Mr. Happy-Go-Lucky. Korman, thankfully, stayed with the show, continuing to entertain audiences until its 10th season. Then there was Tim Conway, the show's resident wild card, a comedic force of nature who operated by his own unique set of rules. His primary directive? Never go all out during rehearsals. Conway intentionally saved his most brilliant and spontaneous bits for the live tapings, a tactic that often delightfully threw everyone else off balance, leading to some of the show's most iconic and unscripted moments. As he once famously stated, "Some of it comes on the spur of the moment, and some I keep in the vault." This unpredictable genius often led to unforgettable interactions, like the time he had Vicki Lawrence completely lose her composure. She hit back with a line so utterly unexpected that it sent the entire set into paroxysms of laughter. "Are you sure that little is through?" Even Conway himself, known for his ability to maintain a straight face, broke into hysterical laughter. These raw, real, and completely unscripted moments weren't just funny. They became the very soul of the Carol Burnett show. However, not every scene was designed for laughter. In 1977, a particular sketch unfolded that profoundly impacted Carol Burnett. It was one of the recurring segments from The Family, where she played Eunice Higgins, a character perpetually weighed down by disappointment and the crushing burden of unfulfilled dreams. Typically, as the sketch concluded, the camera would slowly pull back on Eunice's tear-streaked face as the lights gradually dimmed. There was no music, no accompanying laughter, just the raw, unadulterated essence of heartbreak. Viewers were often left stunned by the emotional depth of these moments. Critics lauded these powerful performances, yet Burnett herself confessed that she could never bring herself to watch them again. In a 2010 interview, she revealed, "It was too real. Eunice's pain felt like my own." This profound connection stemmed from Burnett's own upbringing in poverty. She intimately understood the feeling of daring to dream big only to be met with derision. That sketch, she explained, simply hit too close to home. She later elaborated on these deeply personal feelings in an interview with Harper's Bazaar. Behind the dazzling success of her career, Carol Burnett navigated personal challenges that would have broken most people. Her journey began in college when she met her first husband, Don Saroyan. They were young, deeply in love, and shared a common dream of making it big in show business. Born in Omaha in 1928, Don harbored ambitious Broadway aspirations. They met at UCLA in 1952 and tied the knot 3 years later in 1955. However, their love story, unfortunately, did not last. The devastating loss of Don's daughter from a previous relationship left him irrevocably changed. As Carol's career began to soar, he stalled, and the immense pressure fractured their marriage. They separated in 1962 and officially divorced in 1965. Carol found love again with Joe Hamilton, marrying him in 1965. With Joe's 8 children from a previous marriage and their 3, their house was perpetually full of life and laughter. Joe was an instrumental figure, winning 5 Emmy Awards for his work as a producer on Carol's show. But even as their professional lives soared, their home life began to crack under the strain. In 1976, the infamous National Enquirer published a false story claiming that Carol was drunk at a restaurant while sitting near Henry Kissinger. This lie hit her incredibly hard, not just because it was untrue, but because she had dedicated years to speaking out against alcoholism. She bravely sued the tabloid for $1.6 million. The highly publicized case lasted 5 grueling years and shockingly revealed how prevalent drug use was within her own family. Her daughter, Carrie, later confessed that she used drugs as a means to escape the shadow of being Carol Burnett's daughter and simply be her own person. From 1976 to 1979, Carol watched her child tragically slip away, sending her to rehab facility after rehab facility. At one harrowing point, Carrie ran away from a Texas facility, igniting Carol's deepest fear of losing her daughter forever. Carrie eventually achieved sobriety at the age of 17, but it came at a profound cost. Carol had to make the hardest decision of her life, a choice that left Carrie hating her for a time. Yet, Carol, with her characteristic resilience, once said, "You have to love them enough to let them go." In 2002, Carol faced unimaginable grief when Carrie sadly passed away at the age of 38 due to cancer. Carrie had collaborated with her mother on a play titled Hollywood Arms, which heartbreakingly opened on stage just 5 weeks after her death. Carol was utterly crushed, but she pushed on, famously stating, "I owed it to Carrie." Carol's second marriage to Joe Hamilton had already ended in 1984. By then, Carrie's addiction, the relentless pressure of their demanding careers, and the immense emotional strain had worn both Carol and Joe down. They had even sent their 2 younger daughters to live in Hawaii to shield them from witnessing their parents' relationship crumble. Despite the divorce, Joe remained a close and supportive presence in the family until his passing from cancer in 1991. But even after 2 marriages and 2 massive heartbreaks, Carol's capacity for love and support remained undiminished. In 2020, she and her 3rd husband, Brian Miller, stepped up to take custody of their grandson, Dylan. Dylan's mother, Erin, had struggled with addiction for 19 years, a nightmare that included 8 rehab stints and nearly 240 days institutionalized. The courts became involved when Erin's home environment became unsafe for her son. In July 2020, Erin sent alarming suicide threats to her children, necessitating police intervention and a psychiatric hold. Carol promptly filed for legal guardianship of Dylan, and within weeks, the court granted Carol and Brian temporary custody, underscoring Carol's unwavering commitment to family. Carol Burnett's acting prowess transcended the comedic realm, as evidenced by her captivating guest appearance on the acclaimed series, Better Call Saul. Her character, an elderly woman named Marion, initially seemed innocuous, but she quickly proved to be a formidable presence. When Saul attempted to scam her, she saw right through him, leading to a truly unforgettable scene. As the tension escalated, Marion, with a quiet strength and a trembling voice, delivered a single line that completely crushed Saul. He even momentarily considered the chilling thought of silencing her forever. The show's co-creator, Vince Gilligan, later admitted that writing a scene where Saul contemplated killing Carol Burnett's character felt awful, acknowledging her status as an American treasure. Yet, this very discomfort is what made the scene so incredibly powerful. Marion's quiet determination and vulnerability kept viewers on the edge of their seats. Then, with a calm resolve, she pressed her life alert button and turned Saul in, a moment that sent shockwaves through the fandom. Critics universally praised her performance, calling it easily the best. Her scenes felt remarkably real and natural, a departure from the loud, physical comedy of her variety show days. This was a quieter, smarter, and deeply funny portrayal, a testament to her versatile talent. She went on to win the American Comedy Award for her guest role 2 years in a row. This wasn't mere luck. It was a testament to the unparalleled skill she had honed over decades in front of an audience. These 2 awards were just a fraction of her 25 Emmy nominations. In the 2000s, Burnett's distinctive voice took center stage, taking over where her physical comedy left off. She seamlessly transitioned into animated films, lending her voice to beloved characters in productions like Horton Hears a Who and The Secret World of Arrietty. Many children who watched these films had never even seen The Carol Burnett Show, yet her voice carried the same undeniable warmth, charm, and wit that had endeared her to generations. She didn't need to be on screen to make an impact. Her voice alone did all the work. Burnett's triumphant return to Broadway at the end of the 1990s felt like a true homecoming. She starred in Stephen Sondheim's musical review, Putting It Together, which opened at the Ethel Barrymore Theatre on November 21, 1999. The production enjoyed a successful run of 101 performances and 22 previews. Burnett played the wife, commanding the stage alongside other theater greats like George Hearn and John Barrowman. Her stage presence remained utterly unmatched. And just when people thought she had done it all, Carol Burnett reappeared once more, this time on Apple TV Plus in 2022 to 2024. She starred in Palm Royale as Norma Delacorte, a wealthy Palm Beach socialite who spends the majority of the series in a coma until her sudden, dramatic awakening. The role demanded an immense amount from Burnett. Not only did she have to deliver her signature physical comedy, but she also had to craft a unique, gibberish dialogue to mimic someone just regaining their speech. Remarkably, she made it all up on the spot, creating a performance that was both hilarious and incredibly nuanced. What aspects of Carol Burnett's diverse career do you find most interesting or perhaps surprising?